Hey guys, hope you're doing really well today or tonight. I want to make a quick video on something that I find personally quite exciting, but it's essentially, I guess, how and why I got Mexican temporary residency. Now, I did this probably about a month ago or so, and yeah, I thought it'd be nice to share with you guys, I guess, why I did it, um, how I was able to do it, being based in Australia, and I guess whether or not it'd be a good idea for you. So, yeah, let's get into it. So, why Mexican residency? I've gotten this question about 100 million times, so we'll just go through it now. It does seem a little left field, but there are many reasons why someone might want other residencies, right? So this is just generally speaking. This isn't a Mexico thing per se, but just generally speaking, why would you want other residencies? The main reasons are to live somewhere, to have as a backup option, or to benefit in some other way, right? So if you see a clear benefit to having a legal status in that country, then residency could be a good idea. Now, for example, if you were a legal resident in somewhere in Europe and then you become a citizen, you could live anywhere in the Schengen area or the EU, and you've just opened yourself up to 30 plus countries to live in. If you have residency in, say, America, the US, or maybe Australia, you may be able to get benefits around purchasing properties, maybe healthcare, lots of other things. Okay, so first and foremost, even if you do live in a very developed country, there are other reasons you might want residencies, right, or citizenship options. Now, for Mexico, in my opinion, is a superpower, right? It's bordering one of the most powerful and successful countries in the slash economies in the world, which is the US. Now, to say it's a superpower, I mean, number one, it's absolutely enormous. Like as a country, it has all different climates, right? It's got lots of different elevation points. Mexico City is quite high up, but you've also got obviously the water. You've got Cancun, Tulum, Cabo San Lucas. You got so many spots to go, right? It's also a massive manufacturing powerhouse to the US and also, agriculture wise for growing food and labor. I mean, it's just everything is perfectly positioned as a superpower for, I guess, not sure if it's, I guess, developed. I talk about this in the next point, but whether or not it's a Western country, not totally sure. I think it's a little bit of both, but not to be, I guess, a named superpower that everyone knows, could be quite interesting as well. So again, it's not super Western, but you don't give up a lot of the Western benefits. So for example, there's so much immigration from America and other countries that, you wouldn't feel so out of place if you did speak English or you were American moving down to Mexico. Obviously, you have a lot of conveniences in places like Mexico City. It's an enormous city. I think it might have been, it was either 10 or 20 million people. I'm not sure off the top of my head, but it's absolutely massive. Um, you obviously have a lot of the, shopping malls in some areas that you would have in Western countries, conveniences as well. You also have the benefits of almost being a 24/7, city in the case of Mexico City, where people are out in, 4 in the morning getting ready for business, and they're also out late till the AMs as well. So, quite an interesting proposition. Now, the actual program for Mexican residency, there's a few different ones, but the program that I took, and I guess you would get with many of the other options, right, is is one of those hidden gems, right, where there's not much physical presence required at all. Really, for what I went for my option is you need to attend, in person in Mexico to actually get your kanji, I guess, go through the kanji process, get your actual physical card, and in a year's time or a couple of years' time, you attend again to renew that. You'll attend once more to then convert it to permanent or potentially citizenship if you live there long enough, and that's really it. It's not if you just want to have it as a backup option, like a backup residency. I mean, say a couple days or maybe a couple of weeks in a 5-year period. It's not much time at all. Look at it as a holiday, and yeah, could be really interesting. Now, last point here, attaining the benefits of a Mexican citizen, apart from voting, a passport, and consular support, can be done through getting residency. So it could mean healthcare, potentially extra benefits around purchasing real estate. It could also mean, when you're crossing the border or going into Mexico, having to pay any potential tourist tax or having to, put a timer on how long you can stay there. Okay, it's a more permanent option to living in one of the world's, in my opinion, superpowers, right next to a world superpower. Okay, so quite an interesting proposition. Now, how did I get Mexican residency? Now, I personally went through the economic or financial solvency route. Okay, and essentially means that you just need to prove income or a level of capital, right? And they do that so that you're able to prove that you can live there without taking jobs from Mexican citizens, and or you're able to work remotely, and or you have enough money to just live and just not to bother anyone. Okay. Now, for me personally, I had to prove around 6,700 Australian dollars net each month. Okay, this is different to gross. This is once it had been taxed. Okay, this is in my bank account. Okay, now, if you go over that, awesome, but that was the minimum that I had to prove. Okay. The same goes, or I guess the other option is having a savings account, right? Now, having a savings account of maintaining a balance of 110,000 Australian dollars over 12 months is the other option you could take. Okay. So, not super small amounts of money. I would consider this quite you're doing quite well in Australia. So not super attainable for a lot of people, but is definitely possible. It's not like super out of the world, right? Especially $110,000. If you happen to say if you have a family and you have multiple people contributing to a shared savings account, that could be one way of doing it. Potentially, if you refinance like a home and you pull out 100 grand in equity and you let it sit there for 10 months, or sorry, 12 months, that's another option. So it's definitely possible. It could be combined sources. You could also have some investment income involved, but do your own research or speak to an expert on the topic. Okay. So my personal process involved collecting some documents. We're talking, salary statements. Um, what else was there? Bank statements, taking some photographs, little things like this, right? Filling in some forms. So obviously, I had to fill in a form as to my reasons why I want to do this, and I guess what I wanted to do, and also attending the local embassy. So in Australia, the local embassy for Mexico is in Canberra. Okay, there's no option to get around it. You have to attend in person, and yeah, is what it is. If you can't attend in person, then unfortunately you won't be able to get this residency or this visa. Now, it is quite interesting because you are able to apply for this visa from your home country. Again, in my case, it was Canberra, before you even fly over to Mexico, which is quite good in my opinion. Okay. Now, while I was there, I did go through a short interview, and they kind of just asked around my intentions, and kind of, if I said, "Hey, I'm working," they're like, are you going to be quitting your job? Like, what's going to happen? Like, they ask, genuine questions that one would want to know, for someone moving, going over to their country, so they're not a massive, massive detriment to the country. So I totally understand it. I ended up paying a small fee. It was around 100 Australian dollars, and they ended up giving me the visa on the spot. Now, the other option was that they kind of discuss and they come to a decision in about a week's time, and then send you your passport back. But for whatever reason, at the time they said all goods. So and I got that on the spot, which was great. Now, the next step is to actually fly to Mexico and go through the kanji process and get the actual physical residency card. Okay, now I do plan to do that later on in the year. The visa is valid for 180 days or 6 months. So essentially, you have 6 months to enter the country with that visa. They stamp it, and then you have roughly 30 days to actually go through the process of exchanging that visa for a physical card. Okay. that's the next steps for me personally. Now, my plans as a Mexican resident. Let's go into it. And if any of these things kind of apply to you or sound interesting to you, then could be an interesting option for you. Okay. So first part here, I'm able to enter and live in Mexico for up to 4 years or longer if I choose to. Okay. Now I'm not sure what the future will look like for me, but you do have that option, which is fantastic. Yeah, I mean, like, Mexico currently gives, for me, at least for Australians, gives 180 days visa free. There's no guarantee that that stays the same going forward. They could on the spot choose to reduce that if they wanted to, without reason. So guaranteeing that I'm able to stay there for up to 4 years is quite interesting. Okay, and to come and go as I please. After 5 years of total residency, so it could be a mix of permanent and temporary residency, or just temporary, including some physical presence, I could apply to become a citizen of Mexico. Now, Mexico has a great passport. It's very similar to America, with some downgrades. For example, you can't get an ETA into Australia. You'll need a visa, etc. Um, so not as good, but the fact that you're getting a passport that's of similar quality, you can still get access to, for example, the EU and many other countries in the world that you want to visit. You don't have citizenship-based taxation. You could potentially get it in just 2 years worth of physical presence or less. There's also some exceptions, or I guess citizenship by exception, um, discussions. So that could also be an option if you choose to contribute significantly to Mexico. So very interesting. Again, you might not want to, for example, bank or have a job in Mexico or even invest in Mexico. But being a citizen of Mexico could be an interesting option. A lot of people have done it. A lot of people naturalize and have it as a second option. There's also, for example, if you have a baby in Mexico, they instantly become Mexican, and you can also get a fast tracked residency. So they're very pro immigration, which is awesome. It is getting more expensive, which I'm not sure how the locals feel about that. But anyways, regardless, it's a very open country with lots of opportunity, diverse landscapes. It is cheaper, depending on where you go. Obviously, will have a big influence on that. But it could be a really good Plan B option, or even just a spot to holiday for a few, for a month out of the year. Okay. You'll also get the benefits around purchasing real estate as a local, including close to country borders, which isn't allowed for foreigners. So little things like that, and same as like healthcare, for example, or government universities, for example. There's just lots of benefits to being a resident that um, you know that tourists don't have, and for such an easy program that doesn't require too much from my end, I think it's very interesting. Last part here, and might be very interesting for a lot of people who have a online income or maybe investment income, etc. But tax, generally speaking, is a question mark in Mexico. Whether or not people actually pay it or not is, I'm not totally sure. They do, on paper, have a very high, tax rate for lots of different things for capital gains and income. Okay, and you probably wouldn't want a business there anyway, so I won't even touch on business income. But there are actually programs that you can help legally reduce your tax. One is called the Riscio program, where you can essentially pay up to like 2.5% on a certain amount of income, which is quite interesting. There's also ways around, like, where you're domiciled and where you're actually paying taxes versus just living there and not having as many ties, and then being able to look at it that way. Either or, there's definitely options in Mexico which make it really interesting, um, around immigration, taxes, landscape, quality of life, cost of living. It's just a very interesting proposition, especially when you combine the fact that there's not much physical presence required, which, for the most part, in any other country in the world, there will be a higher level of physical presence. So, yeah, hopefully you guys have really enjoyed the video. If you have any questions or concerns or anything like that, make sure to let me know down below. But otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.